Pathless tells the tale of the last hunter trying to cleanse her world of a corruption laid out by one who would seek to destroy it. The story and lore of this world is discovered through the thoughts of souls who have passed before and ancient tablets describing what has happened to their world. Through this video, I hope to piece together all the lore found in the game into one cohesive story, including some secret or really well hidden lore that may easily go missed. This obviously will be going into spoiler territory. While not giving away how the game ends, it will reveal the backstory of the game that is best discovered while playing through it the first time. I also would like to say all of this lore is open to interpretation. To piece it all into one story, I had to make assumptions on things like timelines and exactly how and when different events happened. As all the lore is scattered throughout the open world, I've tried the best of my ability to piece them together as would make sense and use clues to infer the correct order of events. I would absolutely love to hear what you think or your opinions on the game, the lore, and the story, so if you'd like, please leave a comment down below. Alright, that's enough of an introduction, let's get into it. The story of the Pathless begins a very long time ago, in a world where nothing existed except water. This is when the Eagle Mother arrived in the world. Surrounded by only water, she searched for a place to rest. A branch stretched out from beneath the endless sea, there she perched and the land rose up to meet her. This is how the first island was born. The Eagle Mother laid 5 eggs, and from those eggs the gods of this world, or the Tall Ones as they would come to be called, were born. First the gentle elk Cernos, then the lizard Sorrow, then the snake Nimu, and then the bear Kumo. All of the early writings omit if the 5th egg ever hatched or who was born from it, but some lost texts have been found about this 5th egg, which I will discuss at the end of the video. In the first days, the island was barren and had no trees. The Eagle Mother's children begged of her that they may have shade, so that they could rest after frolicking. The Eagle Mother pitied them, and so she bestowed gifts of great power to each of her children. Cernos the elk, the Eagle Mother's eldest and fastest child, she gave the power of rebirth. From each of Cernos' antler points sprung a different species of tree, and in his branches he carried the seeds of the forest. He traveled down the plateaus, leaving sacred trees behind him. He ran far and wide, tossing his head from side to side, and where the seeds scattered, plants of every kind grew. All of the world's natural splendor, the flowers, the pines, each blade of grass, all of the forest is because of Cernos. As time went on, the Eagle Mother formed new plateaus, giving one to each of her children for them to watch over and to call their own. The Eagle Mother's second son Sorrow, the lizard, was given a great fire which burned inside, and while not meant to wound, was best to be kept at a distance. He controlled the power of fire and loved the sun, which he shared with the plateaus, greeting the sun each morning in the east and banishing it each night in the west. Nimue, the snake, the eagle's 3rd child, was a god of great fortune and wealth. She was of many minds and her moods would change quickly and unpredictably. She was known for both giving life and just as swiftly taking it away. She was also given the power over water and the rains, and would help nourish the plateau's new life. Kumo the bear was the youngest of the siblings. Even as a newborn, he was large and powerful. Full of energy, he liked nothing better than to wrestle. But it was no fun to play with his siblings. Cernos was shy, Nimu arrogant and disdainful, and Sorrow fought too hard for young Kumo. So he loved to wrestle the animals of the land, but he quickly grew much larger than even the biggest animals, and so he had nobody with which to play. His mother wanted to cure her son's loneliness, and so she grew many animals of the plateau, grew them well beyond their normal size so that Kumo would have friends with whom he could wrestle. This is why you can find so many giant bones among the plateaus. All the while, the Eagle Mother created the world, but she did not demand its direction. She would let her children live as they saw fit and find their own path. She rested in her nest high above the plateaus on a floating isle, and she only descended in times of great happiness or great danger. After a great many years, mankind discovered and traveled to this island at the edge of the world, where the realm of man and the realm of spirits intersect. Here they learned of the gods. They learned to fear them, worship them, and learn from them. Nimu loved nothing more than to slither through the grasses, the plains, and the rivers in her snake body, which was strong and fast. She would have loved nothing more than to be a snake all the time, but the Eagle Mother would not let her. In the realm of man, you must have the body of a man. It reminds them that we are for them, and it reminds us that we thrive on their offerings and prayer. And because of this, the Tall Ones were always depicted with a human body. The bond between God and man grew stronger over the years. With each plateau dedicated to a god, the people who lived there became reliant on their Tall Ones, and the Tall Ones relied on their followers. Sorrow taught his people how to work stone to make houses, to turn pottery so that they might preserve food and water, and how to weave so that they may clothe themselves. He taught the people of the lands to commit their works to others and not to themselves, promising only if they followed this path would they find true happiness. Having power over fire and sun, Sorrow breathed fire into their kilns and dried out their clay. While he was considered the most generous of the gods, he was also regarded as the god of war. Out of the Tall Ones, Nimue relied on her people the most. She needed the prayers, sacrifices, and offerings, or she would punish her people in fits of rage. The people who loved Nimue prayed to her, gave offerings to her, found that they had great fortune and riches. But if any strayed from her path or caught her in a bad mood, her punishment was swift. As a test of the god's generosity, the Eagle Mother promised the Wisteria branch to the Tall One whose people provided the richest offerings, and Sorrow prevailed. Sorrow then passed the Wisteria on to his people as a token of his gratitude, and they loved him for it, strengthening the bond between Tall Ones and people. For many centuries, the island was peaceful and life flourished on the plateaus. Cernos Plateau was plentiful and full of crops. Many people lived and farmed here, providing for other plateaus, praying and giving offerings to Cernos as their god. Great libraries were built here, and knowledge of the world was protected. Monasteries were erected to worship the great Cernos and the Eagle Mother. However, not all was peaceful on the plateaus. Nestled among the trees housed a prison where a young, solitary man was kept captive. To most he seemed almost immemorable, but he possessed such charisma that many were drawn to follow him and listen to his words. For many of the people of this island, life had become aimless. While many prospered, there were those who felt there must be a better way to live, a better path for their people to follow. This man, the Pathfinder they called him, preached of using ancient relics to gain power, to become like the Tall Ones, and to find the true meaning of life, the true meaning of the world, and the one true path for his people to follow. And so, an army of people stormed the prison, to free the one who they would call the Pathfinder. Many of these men had traveled to the island seeking purpose from the Tall Ones, but instead found it from the Pathfinder. He displayed such magnetism and such inherent power that they would place their trust in him and take up his banner on his quest of finding the one true path. So strongly did they believe in him, they were willing to sacrifice themselves just to give him a chance at finding the one true path. Much blood was spilled that day, as the old guards would not give him up without a fight. Heavy casualties were felt on both sides. The stronger, better trained guards put up a good fight, but were eventually no match for the sheer numbers that stormed the prison. Freed from his cell, the Pathfinder and his army began to climb up the plateaus. His goal was to find a shrine that housed an ancient artifact, the Mask of Ancients. This extremely powerful artifact allowed the wearer to view the world as the gods, or as the Tall Ones did, to see the world the way it truly was, and to help him lead his people towards the one true path. Their search for the mask first brought them to the plateau of the great lizard god Sorrow. So strongly did the people believe in the Pathfinder, they followed him through the lands, temples, and fortresses. Here the Pathfinder and his followers were met once again with resistance from the old guard, and so more battles took place. Way up high on the side of a mountain, the old guard and a group of monks made their last stand against the Pathfinder. While the monks were unskilled in the art of fighting, they had spent their lives worshipping and praying to Sorrow, their god of war. They would not suffer defeat gently. The old guard taught them as much as possible and tried to prepare them before the Pathfinder's army reached the peak. Many of the Pathfinder's followers did not want to kill the monks. They cried out to join them, to help them find the way, but after refusing, they had no choice but to resort to violence. And so, the Pathfinder's army scaled the side of the mountain and the walls of the fortress like demons, so willing to kill and die for their leader with no concern for their own bodies or lives. Monks and warriors fought valiantly side by side against the Pathfinder's army. They fought for their gods and their current way of life. They were willing to sacrifice their lives to try and stop him. In the end, the monks fought bravely with the old guard, and while not providing much of a hindrance, the Pathfinder lost great numbers in the battle. Passing into the plateau of Nimu, the snake, the Pathfinder and his army found the temple referred to only as the Masked Shrine. Warnings were posted all around the temple, stating only one who was deemed worthy would be able to reach the prize. To all others, there was nothing but great peril. Not to be deterred, the Pathfinder took his followers into the temple where they were met with many traps and challenges. Rather than take the time to solve the puzzles of the temple and to take risks himself, the Pathfinder sent his followers before him, intentionally triggering the traps and sacrificing their lives, all in the name of the one true path. So strongly did they believe, many of his people were willing to make this sacrifice, believing that even if they were to be a stepping stone on his journey, it would all be worthwhile. However, some wished he had taken the time so that they could be there in person to witness the moment in history when he found the path. Upon reaching the bottom floor of the temple, mere steps away from the sacred prize, more warnings of how the spirit mask was not meant to be worn by those who forced their way forward, that they would lack the patience and foresight that the Tall Ones have. It also warned that any who would use the spirit mask, once seeing as the Tall Ones did, would never be able to see the world the same way again. So, walking over the bodies of the men who believed in him, the Pathfinder donned the spirit mask. Seeing as his gods before him, he saw the world. He saw terrible chaos. In his mind, the world appeared to be born of chaos, forged by it, ruled by fickle gods who would not seek to change it. He dove deep into his mind and the strings of the world to find a path, to find the one true path for his people to follow. The Pathfinder dropped to his knees, screaming, "Where is the path? Where is the path?" All who were left around him thought he was struck mad. It was then that he realized that there was no path for them to follow. If he wanted to end the chaos of the world, if he wanted to give these people his purpose, he would need to remake it. He would need to attain the power of a god, destroy this world, and build anew solely around the one true path, his one true path. With the spirit mask, he now had a clear understanding of what he needed to do. He needed more power so he could become a Tall One. Determined to see his quest through, he left the temple taking what was left of his army. He continued to rally more to his cause as he crossed the plateaus into the realm of the bear. Preaching only of the one true path and how he was the only way for them to reach it, he promised that any who sacrificed their lives for him would return once he created the one true path. He led his people to the sword shrine nestled in the lush green meadows of the plateau. Not much resistance was met along the way, and those who saw the army march knew that no mortal man was meant to wield such power. Again, he used his followers to make his way into the shrine, and then into the spirit realm to obtain the Sun Sword. The Pathfinder now had the mask and the sword. He had the power he needed to create a new realm, but he realized that he needed to end this world, to create a new world. But he also realized you cannot end a world whose gods are still alive. It was at this point he chose to shed the title of Pathfinder and would instead take up the mantle of Godslayer. He spoke to his people saying, "You have long known me as the Pathfinder, but that can no longer be my title. I must now become the Godslayer. There will be pain, great pain, but it will be worth it. You have given me your time, your sweat, your belief. I must now ask for your blood. This mask and the sword make me godly, but they do not make me stronger than the Tall Ones. If you sacrifice yourselves in my name, you will give me the power I need to rise high above these gods of chaos. You will give me the strength I require to become the Godslayer. So lay yourselves down upon this holy ground and close your eyes. When you open them again, you will do so on the one true path." Because of his magnetism, because of his charisma, because he had already led these people from one end of the island to the other, they believed in him. Many were willing to lay down their lives right then and there to help him achieve his goals. They found solace in the fact that their life could be a gift to the Godslayer. that in their death they could still carry forward, always bound to him. Others had a harder time accepting what he demanded of them, understanding the ends but questioning why the followers were always the ones to make the sacrifices for the leaders. Some contemplated leaving, not wanting to give their blood, but they also feared the Godslayer, feared that he would hunt them down and take it anyway. And so, the plateau began to transform. The newly named Godslayer scoured the isle to find Kumo and hunt him down. He succeeded in killing the great beastly god and taking his power for his own. Not only did he kill him, but in doing so, corrupted the very energy that once blessed the god, twisting it and taking away the gifts Kumo had shared with his people. Kumo's spirit was transformed, no longer a bear. Kumo was corrupted into an 8-legged monstrosity that struck fear in his followers. All the while, the Godslayer's followers kept busy, building detention centers to house those who would not convert or who would impede the Godslayer. Any who questioned the Godslayer or the one true path were sent here or killed, more sacrifices to make the Godslayer even more powerful. With Kumo's gift stripped away, the plateau began to freeze. His gift of warmth and kindness was removed, and many people froze to death from the unnatural cold. So terrible did it become that Kumo's followers began to pray and offer sacrifices to Sorrow in hopes of bringing back the warmth. But Kumo was a jealous god and would kill any he found who did this. As the Godslayer began to make his way back down the plateaus, his followers wreaked havoc wherever they went. They still believed in him and his one true path, and would continue to make sacrifices to give him the power he needed. On Nemu's plateau, he taught them to make poison so powerful that if exposed to even a single drop, they would perish. They used this tool to poison and kill the Tall One's followers who remained faithful and would not convert. Still, there were those that held out hope that the Tall Ones would prevail and fought against the Godslayer. They tended to the injured and resisted whenever possible. When the great battle between Nemu and Godslayer finally reached a climax, they watched from afar as she fell from the sky, and as she fell, so did the last of their hope with her. After being corrupted, rather than the form of a snake, Nemu took on the form of a four-headed hydra. She could no longer control her moods and could be seen writhing to and fro, each of her personalities battling within her. The skies blackened on her plateau, and the rains and water became almost like oil. Dooming the people to feel ever hotter and never quench their thirst, soon they would come to drown in it. One moment towns were dry and healthy, and the next they were submerged in floods. As the water poured in, people panicked, and those who did not die were left with a struggle far worse than those who perished. Next on the Godslayer's agenda was the lizard, Sorrow. He knew the god of war would put up a fierce battle, and as such, upon entering his plateau, the Godslayer laid a curse upon the land. The curse affected all life on the plateau. It struck the water, killing schools of fish, leaving nothing behind. It attacked the plants and forests, causing famine to spread far and wide. Its reach was so far, attacking all life, that it even attacked dead trees. Thousands of scrolls that had been preserved for generations began to twist and darken. It sowed a madness so deep that none could escape it. Worst of all was how the curse affected the people. It infected their minds and turned brothers against each other. All over the plateau, people affected would turn on their friends, their loved ones, killing them with no humanity, no recognition in their eyes. The curse was so strong it even infected the Godslayer's own followers, blending to their madness and giving them immense speed and strength. They ripped through the land, killing all who stood in their way, and destroying all the offerings and gifts these people had spent so long creating. Sorrow's people all but defeated, the Godslayer took this opportunity to slay the lizard and take his power as his own. Left behind was a giant beast that's fiery rage tore across the plateaus. Sorrow's power contained, the skies darkened, and the sun was banished behind hellish clouds, further spreading the Godslayer's curse across the island. His power growing even stronger, the Godslayer flew down the plateaus at blinding speed towards the land of Cernos, the great elk, destroying bridges, towns, and people along the way. All the while, his curse spread even further across the lands and throughout the world. An epic battle ensued, but Cernos was no match for the power of all his siblings combined, falling prey to the Godslayer, leaving him one step closer to his nefarious goals. Cernos, like the others, was corrupted, leaving only a fiery shell of what he once was behind. He writhed and screamed, and the villages he once protected crumbled under his hooves. His dark ritual to become the only god of this world not yet complete, the Godslayer had one final tall one left to conquer. The battle between the Godslayer and the Eagle Mother was the worst thing they had ever witnessed, and even she too fell to the power of the Sun Sword, the Mask of Ancients, and the great curse upon the world. Yet, even though she fell, the Godslayer's corruption could not fully take hold of her yet, and so he would wait to fully grasp her powers and remake the entire world. Over the years, the island's conditions grew even worse. Libraries were converted into drill halls, bakeries into armories, whole villages became war zones, and the plateaus could no longer rest. Great monuments and shrines were erected in the Godslayer's image, temples and statues of the old gods were defaced, and soon only stories remained of a time where people thrived and there was beauty in the world. The remaining people of the plateaus tried everything they could think of to restore their gods and end their famine, end the cold, and end the waters that oppressed and threatened to kill them all. They sacrificed and offered blood to no avail, and eventually even the most hopeful of them all succumbed to darkness, disease, and death. The Godslayer's curse spread throughout the rest of the world, bringing hunter after hunter to the island to try and stop the curse, to stop the Godslayer. Many entered the island, but none ever returned home. Until one day, the last hunter makes the journey to reclaim the light that has been stolen from the world. Wow, what a story. That brings us right up to the point where the game begins. I do have one last thing I'd like to briefly discuss, but as it could be seen as even more spoilery than everything else, I wanted to save it till the end. Early on, it was mentioned that the Eagle Mother laid 5 eggs, but only 4 tall ones are ever spoken of or seen in the game. Well, that's not entirely true, so if you'd like to explore the game and try and solve this mystery for yourself, thank you very much for watching up to this point, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Everyone else still here? Great. Going back to the first area of the game and that original tablet, we see it is written, "The Eagle Mother laid 5 eggs, and the eggs hatched thusly. First the gentle elk, then the lizard, then the snake, then the bear. She watches over the realms of her children, she repays kindness with kindness." Here we can clearly see only 4 children are mentioned, and throughout the game we only ever encounter 4 tall ones. However, in the first temple right before the air gust that leads to the Elk's Plateau, there are statues of all the tall ones, and we see one with its head broken off. At its feet, you can see the statue is actually of a great white shark. This leads me to believe that this would be the 5th tall one, most likely the youngest of the Eagle Mother's children. But wait, there's more. Further into the game, another stone tablet can be found that says, "Much like the water she lives in, Basila both gives life and takes it. Enjoy her gifts, but do not take them for granted." The name Basila is not ever mentioned anywhere else in the game or in the lore, and there is an identical tablet to this that mentions Nemu instead. Coincidence? I think not. If there were a tall one in the form of a shark, I think it would make sense that it would live in the water more so than a snake, and having power over water would definitely make sense. But wait, there's actually even more. There are super secret shell collectibles that can be found in the game that open up a secret door on the first plateau. If you want to see where you can get them, click the link at the top of the screen now for my guide to getting them all. Inside the door is, you guessed it, a ghostly tall one floating around that is a great white shark. You can't interact with it in any way, and there's no more lore to read in this room, but it definitely seems like too much to be a coincidence. All of this may be an elaborate Easter egg for the game and just something super cool to find, but I believe it points to something much greater that I'm going to cover in another video very soon, so stay tuned for that. I'll add a link to the new video in the description down below once it's available. That being said, I really do hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. If I missed anything or if you have other theories, I'd love to hear them as well. Please consider hitting that thumbs up button and subscribing to my channel as it really helps me out. And as always, happy gaming.